Hello there, I'm reading a blog from our website at ITnearU.nz. IT callouts are like a box of chocolates. You never know what to expect when you arrive at a customer's home to fix their internet. You also don't know how many other so-called geeks and nerds or mobile IT techs were there before you. An anecdote from a recent callout and how we persevered to resolve it. Undoubtedly, being called to a site to fix someone's fiber internet could be any number of things. Perhaps the optical network terminal, aka the ONT or the ONT. It's a little white box on the wall with a fiber connected to from the street to the home, and then from Ethernet cable to your router. Maybe it's not working correctly. Perhaps someone has been working on the road outside, cut a cable, and this happens quite often, and there is no longer any fiber to the internet or fiber to the home at all. Not only to the client's home, but the entire street sometimes. One New Zealand, formerly Vodafone, causes the most confusion for our customers from our experience. Even in 2024, we find this. Quite often customers will be sent a mail from the ISP or from Chorus saying, hey, there's fiber in your area. Can we come and connect your home? And then Chorus, the New Zealand fiber installer, the backbone of New Zealand fiber, will install an ONT in the customer's home ready for connecting to fiber. But because the client had an old coaxial cable installed by Vodafone in a previous life, and it was called FiberX on their old internet bill. And it's not a complete fiber solution at all. It's hybrid fiber, as they call it. All right. But the client may have seen the words FiberX on the bill, and they just assume that they have fiber already and there's nothing more to do. Perhaps they think the little white box is just an upgrade and it magically connects you to a fiber connection now. So you arrive at the home and they steadfastly claim that they have fiber because that's what they were told or that's what they believed. And they show you their new shiny ONT, which suspiciously has a loose Ethernet cable dangling from it, not attached to anything. And then you have to ask them, so where's the other little grey box where the router is connected to? And it looks like there's a cable attached to it that looks like a TV antenna. I've had at least 3 heated discussions personally in 2023 alone from One New Zealand call centres which are located offshore, where until the technician, or myself in this case, takes over the phone and from the client, their representatives offshore keep trying to persuade the client to keep FiberX and not switch to fiber because it's faster and better. They also, almost without fail, after the client eventually does switch to fiber, proper fiber, they try to upsell other products when the client switches, example, antivirus, Netflix, etc. FiberX is not fiber. If you have FiberX in your home, you can do better. We've had a situation in the news recently in New Zealand where an ISP sold a blind customer a $2,500 television. An elderly man was taken advantage of, apparently. So for one, true fiber is not really affected by weather as much as cable, so things like rain and lightning, or moisture as copper cables are, even if copper cables are shielded. A fiber cable along its length can take a direct lightning strike. Nothing will happen to the routers at each end because it's glass or plastic. Do you remember how when we had a lot of damp days and for a couple of weeks, copper lines used to crackle when you were on the phone? Well, coaxial cable is essentially the same thing. It's cable, copper, tin, shielding sometimes. It's not fiber. No matter how much One New Zealand or Vodafone may try to convince you of this, it doesn't matter. FiberX is not fiber. They were even fined for misleading conduct about this very thing. And the fine was originally like $2.5, and apparently it was up to like $3.6 million eventually. So just bear this in mind. They have been found guilty of misconduct on this very thing. All right. So don't let their operators on the phone misguide you. After personal experience with their sales support in front of customers, even after I tell them they're wrong, I feel that this is a well-deserved fine. So they need to really train their staff from the top right the way down. In our opinion, offshore call centers, for that matter, should be completely illegal. It's anti-QE and frustrating. From personal experience, we've encountered issues where the call center operator appears to speak perfect English, very fluent, but not actually understand a word of what we've asked them to do or explain to them. It's one of the reasons we won't touch other companies regarding web hosting and stuff like that as well in New Zealand. A company like Crazy Domains, Dreamscape Networks owns them. They also own Free Parking, Discount Domains, and a host of others, I think web.com as well. They were also, funny enough, fined $60,000, almost Australian dollars, for a subscription trap. It's crazy. And the offshore companies are just so frustrating to deal with. We moved a whole bunch of domains to them, and within a month it was so bad that we just decided, and so buggy, we decided to move away. It took us 6 hours to resolve that on the phone. And to this day, our customers that had our domains with them are still receiving renewal notices from them, even though we're no longer with their company whatsoever. It's just crazy. And it's just, we haven't got the energy to phone them. Anyway, after that bit of a detour, back to the problem-solving process with fiber when you're encountering no internet when you arrive at a client's home or business. It could be the client's router has lost its settings. Quite often the ISP tech support, offshore support, will ask you to reset your router, thereby losing all the settings, making the router a dumb piece of plastic. It's not plug and play when it isn't supplied by the service provider. Even in some cases, the service providers' routers don't work that way. But the support call center person is working from a little checklist, a piece of paper. That's the breadth of their knowledge. They have this little piece of paper in front of them, and they don't know any better, and they probably don't care either. Perhaps the router is defective. Besides being a fiber cable issue, it could be a network cable issue from the ONT to the router, or maybe from the router to the PC or notebook. Also, regardless of how many times you ask clients, have you turned it off and on again? They may have not done it. Not intentionally, mind you. They may just have restarted the incorrect devices. You can't blame ignorance. It's not the client's job to know how it works. That's why we're there. Sometimes we even deal with older clients who have little to no knowledge about how things work in the modern world and are very suspicious of IT people and technology. How can you not trust this face? Recently, we needed a client's email working, so they needed to ask their service provider to send his router settings to him. He needed a username and password. Voyager Internet, for some weird reason, still uses a username and password for logging on to or to set up their routers. Spark, 2 Degrees, One New Zealand, all generic, much easier to configure. Mind you, Voyager's not a bad company. I'm not dissing it, or disrespecting it, but it's just annoying that you've got to phone them to get these settings, because a lot of customers lose that information. Although his computer was old, and besides having an internet port, it fortunately also had a Wi-Fi capability. He didn't even know this. He didn't have a mobile phone, still using a landline. So we temporarily set up an internet hotspot on the phone and connected his PC Wi-Fi to the device. And as the elderly client was watching over our shoulder, the very moment his computer had Wi-Fi and his mail started flowing in, he turned and said, you fixed it. That's great. Very quick. Let me go get my credit card. And the tech had to explain, it's working through my phone. It's not fixed. You have internet, but it's through my phone. And he felt a bit of a gaze in the back of the head and felt eyes that were in a bit of disbelief, as the elderly client never realized that a hotspot was actually possible through a mobile phone. And that, for one, that his computer actually had an internet connection via cable and also wireless. So quite often the customer, when you're trying to resolve a problem, has got outdated or incorrect information. And this particular customer was under the impression that Spark New Zealand looked after his phones and internet, and he said he got a bill from them every month. It was only when the tech support managed to access his email that he saw he was actually with a completely different ISP, in this case Voyager. An ISP that needed a username and password to connect to this third-party router that he had, because he didn't have a one supplied by the service provider. Once the tech had his real service provider's number, and then contacted their residential support, which unfortunately is also offshore. So that was a bit annoying. But fortunately, Voyager responded relatively quickly. He managed to get them to send him his details to reconfigure his router. With the correct settings, we got the new router working in a matter of minutes. Now, most IT geeks would have not delved deeper when the client told them I'm with Spark, because it's such an easy thing to set up, so you think it's something else that's causing it. You have to check things. And even after working, you got to check that the connection is okay. Most IT geeks would have probably just stopped there and left. However, after we reinstalled his router, took our test router out, With the correct settings, it connected at less than 10% of the speed it was supposed to. Even when we plugged the cable directly from his old router into his computer, it was still terrible. We tried the whole switch off and on, didn't work, but the performance just remained really poor. Put our new router, router has a different connotation in New Zealand. We call it routers here. Put his new router in, and it was much, much faster. So he happily purchased a new router. And we did a few other things for this gent, set up his printer, removed some old antivirus products, and we really need to do a blog on this about the what we can only describe as exploitation of some customers. When you have an antivirus product running and it pops up with, you need this, you need this, you need this, most young tech-savvy people are fine with it. But this poor gentleman's paying almost 600 New Zealand dollars in antivirus subscriptions. Some of them are even duplicate. So we helped him with that as well. And we'll do a blog on that about what we regard as predatory sales practices from antivirus companies. Like I said, he was paying almost $600 per year in antivirus subscriptions. Coincidentally, Avast Antivirus, who this company was fined about $17 million for selling users' data. We personally recommend you don't touch Avast, you don't touch AVG. Just use, if you don't want to pay for an antivirus, use the built-in Windows 10 or 11 antivirus. Absolutely great product, works fine. If you want to use something a bit off the beaten track, use something like ESET Antivirus. It's got a banking protection thing, and it's a pretty reputable company, and it's really easy to set up as well. In addition, we cleared and tweaked up some settings on his PC to make it run a bit better, and also removed some old printers, faxes and things. No one uses faxes anymore. And checked out a few things. And when we left, not only did we fix his internet, we got his printer working, his scanner working, we fixed up a whole bunch of software issues he was having on his PC. And as our tech turned to leave, he cheekily exclaimed to the old guy, "Good luck getting one of those mobile companies with young geeks who've basically got like 6 months experience to fix this." And he replied, "Oh, I had them here, but the guy sat for over an hour and a half and he left saying he didn't understand why it wasn't working. And that's why we called you." Remember, when the internet fails you, seeking help from a knowledgeable, experienced IT company near you is not just a choice, but a necessity. As Albert Einstein said, the only source of knowledge is experience. Reflecting the essence of solving internet issues with seasoned expertise, call ITnearU, the IT company near you, and the best IT support and services in Wellington, New Zealand.